Today I'm going to show you how to use just scrap materials laying around or things that you can buy or find for hardly anything to build a support system for your solar panels. I'm using two 250 watt Sharp panels, and they're about 3'3" by 5 foot tall. So the first thing you start with is you find your support, your main structural support. And what I've got here on this little stand is an old satellite support. And these are perfect because the old satellite dishes had to have an attitude and also be able to swing left to right. So these are perfect. And what you do is you put a 3-inch pipe in the bottom here. And then first you bury that into the ground in cement, make sure that it's very stable. You put this on top of that and you tighten these lugs down, and it holds the pipe very rigid. It's got some cups inside that cut into the pipe actually. And then you can control the degree angle right here with this bolt. So that's going to allow you to get your wintertime and your summertime angles perfect. So these are already set up for anything you want to do, and they'll support 2 to 4 panels depending on the size of them. If they're big panels like mine, 2 of them, maybe 4 at the most, but you have to worry about the wind blowing them around. So I wouldn't suggest putting any more than 2 on a system like this. Now, if you take the actual satellite dish, the old 5-foot satellite dish off, almost all of these systems have this little C-channel right here in 4 positions around them with a bolt hole in them. And that's how the old aluminum satellite dish would connect, you know. What we've done is we've taken this old 2x2 fence tubing that we had, and what I did was I just coat right here, here on both sides to where I could slide these together and they would interlock, and that makes them stronger. And then all this stuff is really thin metal and it's coated, so it's good for corrosion. So if you're not a very good welder, and I'm not a very good welder, there's a little trick that I learned a long time ago working in industrial construction. And these rods right here are 3/16 stainless steel rods. And they have a little bit of carbon in them, and they burn at a low temperature. You set your machine on about 52 amps. And they're for stainless steel, but they have a little carbon in them, so you can weld carbon steel with them just fine. And as you can see, I'm not a very good welder, but I rarely burn through using these on a low heat, and it gets a really strong bond. And as a bonus, the actual weld could never corrode because it's actual stainless. Now the carbon will corrode around it, but you just put a good coat of primer and paint over that, just spray paint and just watch it. I mean, it'll last 20 years before you ever had any problem with it. And you can always go back and sand it and fix whatever comes up. Just keep an eye on your system. Now what this does is this X-brace that I've built here sits right down in these channels. See? So it locks right down in there. And what I'm going to do next, I've already ground away all the paint from here so that I can weld, and that's very important when you're welding, to get all the paint and corrosion away so that you have a good bond between the metals. Any corrosion or anything like that is going to cause it to fail. And these things are going to be whipped around by the wind quite a bit, so you don't want any welds to start stress fracturing, and then it's not this. You can always re-weld this, but if your panels start waving too much, you could crack the glass on them, and nobody wants that because they're too expensive. So I'm going to go ahead and weld these up and show you what that looks like afterwards. I wanted to also show you, if you'll walk around here, I wanted to also show you this adjustment for the elevation. This I was talking about earlier. It's got these nuts on it, and you would loosen one, tighten the other, and it'll actually change this to the exact degree you need from winter to summer, because as you know, in the wintertime the sun gets closer to the equator, so it drops in the sky. In the summertime it gets closer to the North Pole, so it comes up from the equator and it rises as we see it in the sky. So during the seasons you can actually tune this into the perfect angle that you need. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find a spot that's correct with the plane of the solar panels on the front. I'm going to mount an actual angle finder on this so that I can look at it, and I can just sit there and turn the bolt, get it to the perfect angle of for my region, you know, my elliptical around the latitude and longitude, and that way I can tune mine in just perfect and make sure that it makes all the power that I can possibly make at whatever point in the year that it is. So anyway, I'm going to finish welding this, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it on the pole and show you guys what that looks like. Okay, so I thought I would just tell you what I'm doing with the support pipe here before I actually put it in the ground in a minute. If you'll notice right here, I found some old bolts around the property that I had lying here in the shop, and what I'm doing is I'm welding them on just I'm doing 3 of them just in thirds around the pipe, about a foot up from the bottom. It's nothing precise, you just throw them on there. And what this is going to do is, when I dig my hole in the ground, and if you set a piece of pipe down in just concrete, a strong wind, the panels kind of act like a parachute or a sail, you know. And when a strong wind comes around, it can actually spin the pipe. Since it's slick, the concrete doesn't bond to the pipe, it simply sits in it. And it can actually spin the pipe inside the concrete, which you don't want. So what I'm doing is I'm welding these bolts on to prevent that. And these bolts are going to set into the concrete. It's going to make it relatively impossible for the pipe to ever move once I set it in its location. So anyway, it's not too complicated of a process. What you're basically going to do is just eyeball 1/3. And I hardly use gloves, but you can just set the bolt on there and then just start your arc from the pipe and follow the arc onto the bolt, and it won't move at all. It'll fuse directly to the pipe instantly. So you see now that it's on there. So I'm just going to weld the rest of these heads completely out, and then we're going to go do the hard part, digging a big old hole in red clay and throw this thing in the ground. So I'll get back with you when I'm ready to do that.